What's up, you beautiful chuds? Welcome to the Let's Talk Horror channel. Welcome to the Creep Zone, and welcome to Tales from the Creep Zone, my side series where I am going through every episode of every season of the Tales from the Crypt series. I am really enjoying going through this incredible, truly iconic series all over again. And as I said, I was going to do it anyway, so why not bring you along on the journey? We are now into season 2. We're like halfway through, or maybe a little bit more than halfway through now. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about episodes 10, 11, and 12, and then we keep going until there's no more, right? But as I said, I'm enjoying it. I hope that you're enjoying it as well. So let's get into episode 10. So episode 10 is called The Ventriloquist's Dummy, or The Ventriloquist's... No, why can't I say the word ventriloquist? Is that right? I don't know. I can't say the words. I'm an idiot, so I can't say words in general anyway. But an aspiring but untalented ventriloquist, there we go again, named Billy tracks down his idol, a reclusive former entertainer named Mr. Engels, for mentorship. Billy is shocked to discover that Engels' puppet, Morty, is actually the man's living malevolent, fuck you words, why can't I say words, conjoined twin who feeds on violence. Maybe I should just start taking out the fancy words. I mean, they're not even fancy words, but I'm just so thick as shit I can't say words. But anyway, that's essentially what the episode 10 is all about. So straight away, we sort of obviously get into the episode. Dickie the dummy. So in this episode, we do have Don Rickles at the start of it. He is a ventriloquist. But I do like this. We do get like the fun intro with the ventriloquist act. I'm sort of getting better at saying that word as we go through. But I do really enjoy like sort of the opening of it. And then, of course, you know, as I said, we've already got Don Rickles. And then we get Bobcat Goldthwait, who... I love this guy. He's one of these guys that like pops up every now and again. Of course, you'll know him from Police Academy and Scrooged, as well as loads of other things. But he is just such a unique, quirky actor that really sort of brings it to every role that he does, and he's always enjoyable. Whether it suits the tone of the movie or not, it doesn't matter, because it just makes it more interesting every time he's in it. But he is somebody that like sort of takes what he does very seriously, no matter how weird or quirky it is, which is why he's very well suited to Tales from the Crypt and the stories and so on. And he's obviously really well suited to this one. But both of them are really good in this episode. They both have very good chemistry as well, which I really like. And also, once again, going back to the quirkiness of Bobcat Goldthwait and Don Rickles being, you know, the angry bastard that he is. Obviously in this, I don't know if he is in real life, but it's just the fact that I do like the fact that they're like very different actors, but the chemistry is still really, really good. There's a bit where like the announcer, when they're like announcing, I think Bobcat Goldthwait, and he's on stage, you've got the guy in the crowd, and it did make me laugh out loud, where there's just some random guy, they cut to him in the crowd, and he just turns around and boom, like, yo, bring back the girl with the tits. Not quite like that, but it did make me laugh. I mean, poor old Bobcat Goldthwait. But as I said, he's one of these actors that's really good, especially in this scene and throughout. He's one of the actors that, even if he is playing an arsehole, you know, sort of like he does in Police Academy, where he's a bit like the bully, so to speak, he's still somebody that you sort of like really feel sorry for. Like, you know, like there's probably a reason why he gets that way in Police Academy and so on. And then obviously it all comes around in the end. And then in this, he's the same sort of character, same as Scrooge. You know, he's one of these people that you do like, and you actually sort of feel sorry for. You sympathise with his character. So once again, it's a good, good casting for a character like this. But this one, you know, it starts off fun. It continues to be fun. And I do like the fact that this episode, it is pretty heavy on the horror. Also, it's heavy on the practical effects, which is fantastic. But also, I do like the fact that this, even though it is, you know, at times a little bit cheesy or tongue-in-cheek, so to speak, they do play this episode sort of very straight. Even when we get into the wild reveal of what is actually happening, like, you know, it's not quite like a possessed ventriloquist dummy as we normally get in these sort of things. It goes even further than that. I like the fact that they do play it all very, very straight. It's not like a massively like it's not like an episode that's played really for comedic measures and so on. Like it's still played very straight. As I said, it's got like this episode's very sort of heavy on the horror with the blood and the things that happen in it, and I really like that. I do like it when you get these wild sort of like stories and ideas and concepts and whatever they are, but yet they play them like really straight, and they do that especially when you get such wild character like performers like Bobcat Goldthwait, and as I said, Don Rickles is very good in this as well. They just play off each other very well. Like I said, good chemistry, and it's just a while because the reveal in this is, of course, that he's got the conjoined twin, as it says in the synopsis, but it's part of his hand. So he has essentially like another person on his hand, and that's how he's doing the ventriloquist act, because it's not, like I said, a possessed doll or anything. It's a bloody another person on the end of his hand, and it is just a wild reveal, and it's, of course, it's very Tales from the Crypt. This episode is very Tales from the Crypt, or like the things that make Tales from the Crypt stand out, the things that make Tales from the Crypt really interesting and fun. It's one of those sort of stories. Now, that's not to say, like, some of the more basic stories like we've had previously, it doesn't mean that they're not good. It just means that they have to be crafted a little bit like different. As I said, I keep going back to it, but I think it's the Three's a Crowd episode. Pretty formulaic story and concept, but it's the craftsmanship. That's Tales from the Crypt when it works if you're doing that. But there are some stories where they're pretty standardized, pretty boring, and they don't really work. This episode is one of those that, like, it just works. It's really fun and feels very sort of Tales from the Crypt, but also, as I said, quite heavy on the horror. Because we do get some pretty like gnarly scenes in it. Like, obviously he cuts off his own hand in it, and that's like pretty gnarly. Like, there's a lot of blood. Like, Rickles is like sitting there with like blood all over him, sort of thing. So that looks really cool. And then also the thing like rips out Don Rickles, like the hand, like once it's off, or like I don't know if it's still on him at that time. It probably is, but it bites his neck, Don Rickles' neck, and there's like blood everywhere. The prosthetics look really good. So there's a lot to really like about this episode. Also, once the conjoined twin thing, Morty is actually like off Don Rickles' sort of hand body. There's a really funny bit where it goes flying through the air. It looks good, but also not so good, which makes it feel and look better because of the charm of it, right? It makes it even more fun. So I do like that. And then there's a bit where Bobcat Goldthwait is obviously, getting the one up on him, and he's putting him in the meat grinder, and as he's doing it in the only way Bobcat Goldthwait can, turns around and says, I'm making you into an arsehole casserole. It's the way I can't say it because I'm in English, but an arsehole casserole. Basically, it doesn't sound as good when I say it. When he says it, it sounds really good, but when I say it, it doesn't sound good. But basically he's making an arsehole casserole, and that line really makes me laugh. It's just the icing on top of what is just a really fun episode. I don't really get the ending in regards to like how, I mean, unless he's like, I don't get, basically at the end of the episode, now this hand thing, Morty has now sort of merged with Bobcat Goldthwait, but I don't really get that because I don't understand how it like manages to merge onto people's hands. I don't know if that is like the supernatural side of it or whatever. I don't fucking know. Or like he sews it onto him, and I don't bloody know. Who cares? It doesn't matter. But it just doesn't really like necessarily make too much sense that that's what like sort of what happens. But the thing is what it makes it fun because of that is the thing that does happen. Simple as that. So super fun episodes. Also, I think this one feels it's about 25 minutes. I think this episode, and I could literally enjoy more of this episode, and that's how you know you've got a good episode. Because you'd like I love Bobcat Goldthwait in this. He's so funny, so you'd like to spend a little bit more time with him or explore it. Like, even if the scene with Morty, and everybody and it all going crazy at the end, if that was longer, I don't know, but I suppose it just means that it's just a very good Tales from the Crypt episode. So I enjoyed it. I wanted more from it. This one I'm gonna give 4 out of 5 creepy cackles. Once again, it's one of those things where I'm sitting here talking about it, and I'm like, now is this one worth the 5? Out of 5 creepy cackles. But I think there is a bit like earlier on in this where the house sort of burns down, and it just sort of like the way that they did it it didn't really like make sense, and that could be like the editing side of it, or it felt like they were missing an in between. Like I was saying, like this episode could have been a bit longer. I think there is a moment nearer the start where it like jumped from like this is happening to house is on fire, all this sort of stuff, and then it just cuts to however longer later with Bobcat Goldthwait no longer a kid, he's now an adult. I feel like there could have been like an extra scene, so that's why I haven't given it the 5 out of 5. I've just gone with the 4 out of 5 because once again in my head I'm thinking about the other episodes of like what's got 5 out of 5, what's got 4 out of 5. You know, this isn't a medium like a middle episode. This is a very good episode, but then also there might be some other episodes that I prefer over this. But this is a really good one. Just bloody fun. And yeah, it's definitely one of the episodes that you're like, I always look forward to going back to watching this one. You know, this is always on the list of the ones that I'm like, I'm going to watch Tales from the Crypt, and this is going to be one of the episodes that I enjoy watching. So let's move into episode 11. So episode 11 is Judy, You're Not Yourself Today. This episode, I don't know whether my views, I've said this before when I've done this sort of side series, is that I haven't, you know, I haven't gone into like other websites or whatever, because obviously I want to give you my very honest opinions on what I like and what I don't like, or what my favorite episodes are and so on. So I haven't looked at like rankings and stuff. So, and this is one of those episodes that I have no idea what other people's thoughts and reactions are to it, because really it sort of feels like an episode that a lot of people might actually like. So I honestly don't know. So, but this one for me, even though it does feel like quite a lot Tales from the Crypt, it is an example for me where it doesn't work. And I think a lot of that is to do with the structure of the episode itself, and the process of the making of the episode, so to speak, rather than necessarily the concept. You know, once again, it's sort of like a concept we've seen before, but it the way that they're putting it to, you know, to the format of the show or whatever, and the structure of the story, I don't know what it is, but I just couldn't connect with it. There are moments in it, but I'll get into that. But this one is Judy, You're Not Yourself Today, is all about an unhappy status-obsessed couple's lives are upended when an elderly cosmetic saleswoman who is secretly a witch places a magical medallion around the wife's neck. This causes the two women to instantly swap bodies. So, like I said, it's something that you sort of like, you know, body swap sort of stuff. And also the way that they do it in this is a little bit creative, you know, and a little bit unique, which is in its favour. Also, you know, it sort of makes sense in regards to, or it makes it a little bit interesting in regards to like why it's happening and so on. But it just, as I said, just throughout this episode, I just felt like it's just every now and again, it's the same with movies, you know, with horror and stuff. There are always going to be every now and again things that I just feel like I don't connect with. And a lot of that time is like because of the way that it's made and the way that it's structured and so on, or like the way that it's edited. And this is just one of those episodes, and it's interesting because it'd be interesting to know if any of you out there, and obviously, of course, put it in the comments on our socials, wherever, you can let me know how you feel about this episode. I don't know whether it's sort of, you know, you have the same sort of feelings about it as mine, when you're like, nah, it's all right, or, you know, it's not a good episode at all, or you're like, what you on about? This is like one of my favourite episodes. I truly don't know, but I can only tell you what I feel about it. Also, when we start this episode, it feels like the longest intro for an episode, like, yeah, and it just feels a little bit like runtime, because they're like, oh shit, like we've got to make sure we're filling all this episode, you know, out to get to enough time. So already I was like, fucking like, hurry up. Then we get obviously a very weird start where you're sort of like, what the absolute shit's going on? Like the characters just feel like too weird, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's the way that they're setting these characters up, the way that they have their relationship together. It's just too out there. Like, it's like, honestly, this is like a cocaine episode. It's like whoever made it, and the team, it's just almost as if they were all on coke off their face, and they're like, let's keep it going, and all that sort of stuff. And there's two people earlier on at the start of it, two different people who remind me of different versions of Crispin Glover. We've got the main guy in it who reminds me of like, you know, he kind of looks like normal sort of day Crispin Glover, but then we get a knock on the door, who's some guy, I don't know, I can't remember who the bloody guy is, but somebody who knocks on the door looks like the George McFly version uh, from Back to the Future of Crispin Glover. So that made me laugh. Not that anybody else will probably ever think that, but I was like, there's two Crispin Glovers, but it's not Crispin Glover, as much as I would love it to be Crispin Glover, but it's not him. But we at least we get two sort of versions of him, and the guy sort of like the way that he acts as well. You know, the quirkiness, the weirdness is a little bit like Crispin Glover as well. But I think that they just like the start of this and sort of throughout, they sort of tried to land some comedy. You know, they sort of tried making the husband and wife like quite comical and quite funny, but it doesn't. For me, they come across as fucking annoying rather than funny. And once again, that could just be me. And throughout this episode as well, once again, it's about like the process of it being made as well. Throughout this episode, you've not only got incredibly annoying music. The music is so like pumped up to 11, like it is so loud throughout. So when I was watching this episode, even that was just pissing me off. That it was just the music, you know, it was so loud, and it wasn't the volume. I can turn my volume up and down on my remote. I'm not stupid enough to know that I can, you know, or can't do that. But it was just so loud throughout the episode, and it keeps going on. Like even in my notes of me, you know, what I write down, like here that I've got in front of me as I'm watching the episode, I write down the notes so I can give you once again my very like sort of very honest like thoughts and perspective on the episode. I've got it written down loads, and still this fucking music. Or later on, the music's annoying, it's still going. That's what happens pretty much throughout. So yeah, it's sort of for me. This episode already sets up to be pretty annoying. You've got the husband and wife that are almost like trying to be funny, but it's not. You've got the really infuriating music. It does my head in, and then you're like, well, hopefully this gets a little bit better. But then Happy Gilmore's grandma, she turns up in it. She's the person that's playing sort of the witch. She's really good, and she's wearing as many gold chains around her as Mr. T. So I don't know if she borrowed them from him or anything like that. But yeah, this episode is like it's like being on cocaine or like being on acid. It's like a trip. This episode where you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. It's quite fast paced, but not really giving you everything that you need to sort of know about it. Once again, the husband and wife characters that I don't really like. I think as we go through it, I think that they become a little bit better, like in regards to where you understand their relationship a little bit more. But it's just a wild episode that didn't really like. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense, and not that everything has to, but also everything sort of has to, doesn't it? So whatever. So yeah, so the music keeps going. It's really fucking annoying. There's no moments in this where he's like, I don't really believe what's going on. Like this can't be true. Like when Happy Gilmore's grandma sort of does the body swap and is now his sort of wife. And then what his actual wife is all like, that's not me or whatever. See what I mean? Confusing. Well, it's just the way that I'm explaining it because I'm stupid. But it's like the immediacy of him like going, oh shit, like this is actually like there's no time for him to go, oh there's no way this is real, you know what I mean? Like he believes it in an instant, and then that's when he's trying to sort it all out. So once again, it just feels like so rushed, and they're like, well, this is just the story and we're just going to fill it out with whatever we need to. Does it need to make sense? No, but for us as the viewer, it does. So it doesn't really matter, you know. I really don't like this. Although the husband, he does have a very nice, fancy pair of pajamas, which is like this full tiger pajamas. So if anybody knows where to get them, let me know because I want some tiger pajamas, and they're like the button-up ones as well. They look super fancy. I would bloody love some. If I had some, I would have worn them from this episode. But yeah, this episode it just did my nutting, quite honestly. As I said, the structure of it I don't really like. It angered me throughout. The music angered me throughout. You know, just the lack of anything. It was very weird, but not in a good way of being weird. And the characters aren't, for me personally, likable enough for you to really give a shit about everything that's sort of happening. The best part about this is the closing segment. Of course, we get the opening segment and the closing segment every episode of the Crypt Keeper himself. The best part of this whole episode is the fact that he's sitting there holding a gun, but it's quite clearly some guy's like hand coming out from like the death like this, because the hand is fucking giant compared to his like, you know, skeletal corpse body. You've just got like a guy popping his hand up with a glove on, pretty much, with a gun, and it looked quite funny. And that to me made me laugh and was the best part of this episode. So this one for me, once again, it doesn't land. This is getting 1 out of 5 creepy cackles for me, and it'd be interesting to see what you guys, what you all think about this episode, because once again, you know, everything is subjective, right? You know, and that's the way that it should be, especially anything that's horror regarded, because we all take what we take from it, you know, personally, is so different to what the next person can, and the next person after that. So even with any of the episodes, like, feel free to let me know how you feel about it. It's not about being right or wrong, because it doesn't matter, because it's all subjective. I can think about these episodes whatever I bloody want, and you can think about them whatever you bloody want. But not knowing what people's rankings are, or not knowing what other people think about these episodes, is still quite interesting for me. You know, I do want to know. So this one is a 1 out of 5 creepy cackles for me, but for everybody else, they might be like, what are you banging on about? This is a bloody good episode. So it'd be interesting to know. So if you can, let me know in the comments or on the socials. But I'm moving on from this one because I didn't bloody like it. Episode 12. Let's get into it. So episode 12 is Fitting Punishment. And like the episode before, I feel like this is another episode that's going to be, like, the way that I look at it, or like, you know, how I feel about it, is definitely going to be maybe different to what other people do. And I think, as I said, a lot of it is down to, you know, the filmmaking side of it, you know, the process of the creation of what we see, and how they do the story, if there is any story. Um, I think that is a big part of, I mean, that is a big part of what Let's Talk Horror is outside of this side series is anyway. It's about talking about the movies, whichever movie it is I'm talking about, but it's also the technical level of that movie, the process of making that movie, and what they've put on screen for us as a viewer. Is that successful? And I think that this is why this might be another episode that people might be like, why are you saying that about this episode? Because this episode does have good moments. But the biggest problem is what I'm going to go into. So this episode is episode 12, as I say, Fitting Punishment. A mean and violent mortician takes in his orphaned nephew for free labour, only to murder and dismember him over a coffin mix-up, which ultimately triggers a supernatural poetic revenge. So, the crypt keeper at the start of this, he doesn't miss a bloody basket. He's got like a basketball costume. A costume, it's not a costume. A basketball bloody. Why can't uniform? I don't fucking know. Why can't I even think about it? I've literally got basketball fucking tops upstairs. Why can't I think about it? Anyway, doesn't miss a basket. He's got absolute hooping skills at the start of this. But this one sort of, you know, it is very Tales from the Crypt, which is why I think, you know, my viewpoint might be very different to other people's on this as well, because it does feel very Tales from the Crypt. You have the classic, you know, sort of bad character or questionably bad character in some of the episodes. This one is, of course, just not a very good guy at all. You know, he's a mortician guy. He's basically robbing people's gold teeth. He's just being not very nice. It's already set up that this is not a very nice guy. You know, he basically like orders coffins that are too small for people because it's cheaper. So yeah, he is somebody that has a clear disregard for you know, for being a human being, so to speak, on an emotional level, so to speak. And of course, like it says there, you know, that he has his orphan nephew there to help him free labor. And he's just a true horrible person to this kid. And I think the problem with this episode is that it doesn't really, honestly, have much of a story. It just feels very much like we're just put into this scenario rather than a story. Like, the story is you've got a bad person who has his orphan nephew there purely to do whatever he wants. And then this, you know, this guy's going to be absolutely horrible to him, as he is with other people. He's going to have a disregard for the living and the dead, and that's pretty much the story. But like, nothing really is happening in between this until we get to the end, when he gets his comeuppance, as you do in the Tales from the Crypt episode, whether it's the person, the main lead of the story, you know, and they get the comeuppance, or it's somebody else, you know, that's part of it who gets their comeuppance and deserve it, you know. But that's pretty much all this episode is, you know, and it has some really good moments. And also, I do really like how this one's shot. This one is like really well shot. They do some really interesting sort of camera angles. I do like the fact that like in the sort of like where they, you know, he's doing his job and stuff with the dead bodies and stuff like that. It looks like really dirty, really grimy. It sort of goes with like sort of the lack of regard for the character, you know, of what he has for these people, you know. And I do like that. That blends into what, you know, who this person, who this character is. Obviously, there's some really good sort of blood stuff in this as well. Once again, it's quite a bloody episode. So I really like that sort of side of it as well. But it's just, you know, and also the guy that plays the uncle, Moses Gunn, I think that's who it is. He is actually very good. Like, he plays it. Once again, I love it when you play things really straight and it's not done for laughs. And this episode is absolutely not done for laughs. This is a very sort of dark, very sinister sort of episode about, you know, like I keep saying, somebody that really has a disregard for the living and the dead, and really just doesn't care. And even though he has, you know, family, this is his blood, he has his nephew, even then he doesn't care about him at all. And he plays it really well. He plays that very straight, you know, like you're like, this is not a very nice person. And there's no like, oh, he's not a very nice person, but there's like the odd funny thing that about it. There's nothing really funny about this episode. It's just a dark, very, very dark, sort of like sinister, mean episode. And when he does what he does, and of course the reason to get his comeuppance, and he does end up killing his nephew, once again, it just feels like there's nothing there story wise until we get to the end. And once again, like, I mean, I was going to say I could be wrong. I'm not wrong because this is how I feel about it, but other people might think about it differently. This film, this episode, what I do like about it is that when we get to the end and he gets his comeuppance, it's the way that that is done, like on a good pace, fast pace. It's building up that sort of tension. We get the supernatural element of, you know, obviously because you know, he gets basically his feet cut off, which is, you know, mental, by the uncle. And then at the end, he comes back and he's going down the stairs and he's got no feet. Practical effects wise, once again, throughout, like I said, a little bit like this, it has like very creative, like sort of filmmaking in some moments with the angles and stuff. It's got really good sort of practical effects. The effect of him, you know, the shot of the you know, the nephew coming down the stairs on crutches, but he doesn't have any sort of feet. That looks really cool. I was really like impressed by how that looks, and also like it's pretty messed up as well. And then of course, you know, he's always going to get his comeuppance as well at the end, as I keep saying. But it just feels like, as I said, this is a very mean episode, and sometimes, especially with Tales from the Crypt, it is about having some form of levity sometimes, or even if it is an episode without that much like comedic relief or the levity, it is about the craftsmanship. And for me, the thing that I struggle with this one when it comes to the craftsmanship is, yes, the characters are performed very well. Yes, the practical effects are good. You've got some creative filmmaking, or like some of the shots look really good. And once again, I like the fact that, you know, it looks dirty and grimy, you know, when he's doing his mortician work and stuff like that. But it just felt like the story lacked much, you know, and it just went along, like it just explained it at the start in regards to showing who this character is, and then it just did all of that until it went to the end. And it felt like they were like, well, the ending, we know what we want to do for the ending, and that's going to be the big part of what this episode is. And it felt like they didn't necessarily know or care too much what they did at the start. It was more about setting up this character to just be a bad person and then move on till the end. And that was a shame. So overall, I think this one I'm going to give 2 out of 5 creepy cackles. I'm sort of leaning towards 3 in a way, because once again, more do you think about it, you know, you think to yourself, well, actually, like, it's shot well, which is more than what some of the others have done. You've got good performances. You've got, you know, cool practical effects at the end, like I said, with the, you know, the nephew's feet missing, which is, you know, is horrible, but also it's a pretty gnarly effect that they do. And he does get his comeuppance, and it's somebody that deserves sort of the comeuppance, because they're so, like I say, the disregard for the living and the dead. So yeah, maybe, do you know what? I'm going to jump it up to 3. But it isn't great. Like, this isn't going to be one that I'm going to put on my, favorite episodes. But I do think it just would have been a lot better if there was something leading the story a little bit more. Or we delved a little bit more into something, within the episode nearer the start before we reach the end. Because it is just a whole episode of this guy being really horrible, and then we get to the end and he gets, his comeuppance, as I keep saying, which is obviously, what we get in Tales from the Crypt. But I do like it. It looks good. So yeah, I am going to up this to 3. I have got 2 written down, but I will up it to 3 creepy cackles. And once again, like I already mentioned in like another episode or the previous episode, this is where like the Crypt Keeper is really like delivering the Crypt Keeper puns. Like on this one, he says the next best thing to making a goal is becoming a ghoul, which, what a bloody joker he is. But that's sort of like, that's where we are now with the Crypt Keeper. Like, John Kassir has obviously really found the voice and the character now, and they really sort of like, know what a treat the Crypt Keeper can be, and what an incredible host. And sometimes he ends up having the best moments of the episodes, even though he's only had it at the start and the end. But of course, like, we wouldn't really have it any other way. But there we go. So that's another 3 episodes. That's 10, 11, and 12, and then we keep going from here. But as I said throughout this, and there's 2 episodes in here that I sort of feel like they are going to be ones that people are going to be like, I love that episode. And they're episodes that I don't necessarily love. But I've given you my reasons. That's how I think about them. And it is what it is. Maybe the next lot of episodes we get into, maybe they'll be absolutely banging, or they'll be even worse than these. I don't know. We'll get into them. But I'm enjoying this, as I said at the start. I'm really enjoying it. I hope you are too. And we just keep on going on this journey through Tales from the Crypt once again, and until we end season 2, and then we keep going to season 3, 4 onwards until we're all done, and then I can sort of ride off into the sun and then keep watching Tales from the Crypt. But I don't have to sit here and doing episodes about it. But I'm enjoying it, and I hope you are. So we'll see you on the next one. Stay creepy, fuckers.